I'm here for the Loveland Voice. I'm here with Mayor Jacki Marsh today. It is April 8th in the morning. We're at your home. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for what you're doing for our community. It's important.
Well, same. And that's why we're here. We had a very interesting week in Loveland.
We have had a series of interesting weeks, and it seems like every time we have a city council meeting, something new and strange happens.
It's been wild. So we are really grateful that you're taking the time, because we had a lot of questions, and I know our community has a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And I may or may not leave this in the interview, but sort of the framework I think everyone is coming at this from is like, what the hell happened?
Yes.
Let's start with the city council meeting on Tuesday.
Okay, April 4th.
April 4th, yes, thank you. There were a couple of different things that were a little odd and that maybe I didn't completely understand.
Yeah.
What was up with the packet or the timing of the packet and the presentation, and how did that potentially impact how things went?
So normally, we have, city council has requested that staff and basically city manager and city clerk and whatnot have our packets ready by Thursday. That usually bleeds over into Friday because you've got staff making changes and stuff, so we usually have them at the very latest 5 p.m. Friday. We were notified that they wouldn't be ready. We were not told they wouldn't be ready until Monday, so I'm expecting sometime over the weekend to get a notice that they're ready. That did not happen. The packets, the agenda packets with all the material that we need to read, form our questions, didn't get published until 5:28 p.m. on Monday. That's barely 24 hours before the meeting. Most of us have either jobs or, like in my case, I was at a town hall. I think I got home at 8:30 p.m. on Monday. I know Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally was in a meeting till 9 p.m. Monday. And then we all have meetings and things to do on Tuesday. The packet was published. It was that last item, 7.2. That was 297 pages.
So that's what you got?
That's what was missing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's difficult.
Yeah, it is.
It's almost impossible.
It makes it so, at least for me, that I'm not as organized as I'd like to be, because I haven't had the time to process what's in the packet and what are my questions and what are my concerns.
Right.
So it makes it kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
And meetings are already chaotic.
That was a long one. This meeting was over 6 hours long?
Let's see, we started at 6 and went past midnight.
Yeah. Okay.
The next, I think, strange thing about Tuesday night is normally we have a presentation, and it's usually staff and maybe who's ever requesting something from us. And we typically want to ask the questions at the end of their presentation so that we're not interrupting. And I'm sure you've seen enough meetings when we start interrupting them, it derails everything, right? Mm-hmm. So in recent years, we've asked everybody to hold their questions to the end of the presentation. Well, at the beginning of item 7.2, when it turned over to the Lura chair, Commissioner Foley, he makes a motion that appeared to be reading from a script, that he wants to hold all questions and comments till after the executive session.
Not after the presentation.
Yeah.
After the executive. Okay.
Yes, and I challenged it because it's not a safe thing to do. I come into those type of meetings with a lot of my own information, a lot of my own questions and comments. I am free to ask any of those because it's information I had before the executive session. Same with all the rest of the commissioners. That information you can talk about in an executive session, and you can talk about it afterwards because you had it before the executive session. That's the proper way to do this. So you're safe. You only have to worry about not disclosing what you learned in it, right? So I'm confused by why that was done that way. What it ended up, the result of it was, we had a very one-sided, pro-developer presentation that was never questioned or challenged, alternate view given to other commissioners and to the public, it was a one-sided marketing.
That kind of brings me or begs the question, like, what are the rules for the LURA board, and are there rules? Because my understanding is they're still operating under city council rules, but they're not city council, they're LURA, and like, when do you have bylaws? Will you get them?
I don't know if they'll have their own bylaws, but they'll certainly have their own rules of procedure. Currently, they are operating under the city of Loveland because that was just the most immediate thing you could do. I think we have some staff and maybe some counselors that have not really made the leap to this is no longer solely a city of Loveland board, but this is in fact now a regional board, and we need to give consideration to equality and fairness, not come at this purely from a Loveland perspective, because of the entities that you see on this board, Thompson is the biggest contributor of property tax dollars. The county is next, and followed by the city of Loveland. So if you're going to prioritize who should have the loudest voice,
let's talk a little bit about this executive session. Well, Councilor Overcash said before the executive session that he had something he wanted to say to direct city staff, and that he would save it for after the meeting, or after the executive session. And then you tell us what you did next.
Well,
before the executive session, you, if I understand correctly, you did not agree that there should be an executive session.
Well, first of all, I believed we should have had comments and questions, after the presentation. That would allow us to get everything we already knew on the table, so it didn't get mixed up in what we might learn in the executive session. Not having that, opportunity and hearing a very one-sided presentation, now I've got to be concerned about, my saying something after the executive session that pertained to something I already knew. And that's a risk. It's a risk for all of us. So I didn't agree to go into, I voted no on going into executive session for a couple of reasons. One reason is this is illegitimate, and I made that statement during the city council meeting. You have these Colorado State Statute 3125, and 107 is the portion that deals specifically with farmland. This parcel is already in an urban renewal authority area plan. It is therefore ineligible. You cannot have another 25 years. You get 125 years. So to even be continuing on when we've heard from the primary sponsor that the intent was you don't want to retroactively, say those existing URA plans have to stop. The prime sponsor has made that very clear. So to continue on like that made no difference is illegitimate, and I believe we're at high risk of violating a state statute. So I don't think we should go into executive discussion at all. And then you have it that we haven't been able to ask questions or give commentary. So double reason for me not to go in. By the way, I had the opportunity to talk to Randy Fisher of Thursday of this week. He was the co-sponsor from the House side, and he confirmed what Morgan Carroll told us, that was never the intent of that exemption, that it was not intended you could take land out of the current URA and use it to create a new URA. Right. So you have both prime sponsors saying the same thing.
Right. Okay. You also chose to abdicate your position as mayor and not participate in the executive session even when the rest of the board went in. Can you tell us why?
Well, kind of those reasons. I didn't want to legitimize what I believe is quite honestly illegal. It would be illegal if we go to that point that we actually say we can do E and we can, go forward with this. And then again, without having the opportunity to ask my questions and introduce a lot of the information that I have, the risk that it's something I already knew going into the executive is discussed in the executive session, and I say something 2 weeks later. This has already happened to me in real life as mayor of City of Loveland, that happened, I believe, in my first year, something I knew before the executive session. I said a few weeks after the executive session, we had several counselors go running to our city attorney. The mayor, said, divulged something discussed in executive session. Well, it was something I already knew before. So I'm very careful.
Real briefly for folks that aren't familiar, which is probably a lot of people, what is subsection E? Well, it's hard to tell what order to ask the questions. All right, Don Overcash came back after the executive session and read a statement.
Yes.
Relating to subsection E.
Yes.
And directing staff, correct me if I'm wrong, to move forward as if, okay, we're down to subsection E now, and we are moving forward with that, and he stated that the county had indicated that they weren't wanting to cooperate. I don't know when that decision was made, or if it was by the county. Anyway.
Yeah.
What is subsection E? And then we'll get to what you think about that.
So you have, a Senate bill, a House bill, 10-1107, which is now part of the state statute. That the idea is they wanted to stop the abuse of using farmland in a URA plan area because it's specifically for urban redevelopment, downtrodden areas of town. It was never ever intended to be used with farmland, ag land. So the fact that it was happening is what spurred, the bill in 2010. So if you look at the reason, they had limited exemptions. So, and those were compromises. The actual sponsors of that House Bill 10-1107 was that no farmland would be used in urban renewal area plans. There were compromises made to get, it was almost unanimous votes in both houses when it went, in fact, one might have been. So you have, these are the exemptions. The agricultural land is a brownfield, contaminated. Not less than 1/2 of the urban renewal area as a whole consists of parcels of land containing urban level development that at the time of the designation of such area are determined to constitute. So the two that the city was going after was D, that all the public entities that are gonna, divert property tax agree. That's the one that they were going for. And if the county has paused negotiations, the one that they've been saying they can do with or without the other taxing entities is E. And that reads, the agricultural land was included in an approved urban renewal plan prior to the effective date of this subparagraph. And that would be June 10th, I think, of 2010, or June 1st of 2010. That is the grandfather clause that was intended to say this is not retroactive. If you have 10 years left on your, URA plan and it happens to have farmland in it, you get to finish your 10 years. It was not meant to say you can take your land out and start a brand new URA with a new 25 years. I mean, so, we have a city attorney who's saying, if you read that line, it doesn't say we can't.
Right.
Well, how you look at legislation is you look at the overall intent.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read that bill in its entirety, the intent is to shut down the use of farmland in a URA. So why would that say, oh yeah, you can pull it out and start again?
Okay.
The concept is ludicrous.
Okay,
Yeah.
to that point, why do you think, and if you don't have an answer, that's fine. To me, like, the more I learn, the more I realize how wild it is that it appears that maybe a majority of our city council, at least, is really gung-ho to make this particular URA situation, despite all of the reasons potentially not to support it. I don't get it.
Okay, and I could look at that a couple of ways. We've had many things come up over the years with this particular developer. It's almost always, 8-1. Maybe Councilor Sampson or Councilor Ball on one occasion voted with me to say no. But the fact that this is not considered a done deal that there's questions, that it's probably not gonna be 8-1 at city council, and it's probably not going to be 12-1 in a Lura board, I think is actually a fairly good sign that, you know, I look at this as extreme favoritism of one developer, and it's blatantly obvious if you look at the location of this parcel. The farmland parcel to the west of it is getting a very similar development in the sense that it's retail along Highway 34 and residential going south. No metro district, no URA, no fee waivers, no incentives. They're doing it all on their own. You can drive down Mountain Lion Drive and you can see that they've extended the road. There's a road now going north and south, which is going to connect with, I think it's Hans Peak, with the signal light. Ford dealership, they put in a ton of money. So if you just look at that lot and see what's being done, you could say, why does this developer get all this and this one got nothing?
It's surreal to me. And I posed that question to some other councilors as well by email, and I didn't get any answer that really satisfied my question, so thank you for...
Well, and to your question about, you know, they seem to be in favor of it, we haven't voted. Council never voted to do this. Council never voted to let's pursue a new URA. You know, the fact that there was a prepared statement read that says council direction is to move forward with E, we never said yes to look at a new URA.
To me, that blew my mind. I stayed up late, I watched the meeting, I was like, wait, what?
What? You know, we never voted on that. And I would contend that there have literally been hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on this.
The amount of time?
The outside attorneys, senior staff time. You know, you're into hundreds of thousands of dollars that the city council or the Lura board never authorized. Never. You know.
As a person who's not in charge of anything, or at least in relationship to the city, it's pretty ludicrous to me, and it kind of feels like the residents have been left out of the priority of the needs of the residents and how dollars should be spent during a time of high inflation. And
you know, I frequently get asked by people in other communities, sometimes elected people, sometimes journalists ask, you know, is the city of Loveland corrupt? It's not an uncommon question that I get. And I'm very careful because I have no idea about relationships that people might have with entities that come before us. But I will say that our processes are corrupted. The guardrails that should protect, you know, the integrity are corrupted. If you have, you know, staff directing this, working with the developer without the city council having directed that, you know, when we do a rule of 4, that's fairly, you know, come back and tell us what it's going to cost, give us, you know, there was a rule of 4 by both, I think, Malloy and myself to say, why can't we charge our full 3% in Centerra instead of 1.75? They can still collect their 1.25% public improvement fee and their 1% retail sales fee. That was a rule of 4 request. That should not be a lengthy negotiation. You know, and then Councilor Johnson, before she left office, had what I consider a rather insane suggestion that we see how much more we could do to partner with the McWhinneys. Well, that is not authorization to go out and start negotiating for a new URA without council direction. That is not authorization to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in staff time, outside consultant, outside attorneys. That was never authorized. So how did we get here? The processes are corrupted. Discussions out of view of the public. You know, scripts that are being read to say we're not going to have questions and comments before going in. That's a corrupted process. You know, we have a way of doing our meetings, and you better have a pretty darn good reason if you're not going to follow them. And, you know, they shouldn't be sprung on us at the last minute when nobody's had a chance to really consider it. I was happy that was not, I think there were, 4 of us that said, no, we want to have those, so it was not it was a fairly split decision.
We're gonna wrap up this interview for today, although I'm sure we'll have opportunities to talk about more stuff,
Yeah.
more and more news in the future.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry.
I wish that weren't the case.
Right. So in the meantime, for this interview today, what's one thing that we haven't had a chance to talk about that you think the public should know about where we're at right now?
Towards the, after, at some point, Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally was asking about, the rules and procedures and potentially bylaws and, wondering how we were gonna get, the Lura was gonna get its own attorney, versus using the cities, which is obviously a conflict of interest. They're representing the city. Our city attorney answered, we have contracted with another outside attorney. That indicates that there's a signed contract that hasn't been discussed with city council or the Lura board. I have particular concerns with the entity they contracted with. It's an entity the city uses frequently, but it's also the exact attorney and firm that has represented the city in 2 cases where they've taken me to court over my request for information through Quora. This attorney has been the opposing counsel against me twice, and that's a conflict of interest. So that's concern. But again, it's an entity, a firm that the city uses frequently. This should be a joint decision, and we probably want to have somebody that doesn't have those ties to any of the, members of the Lura Commission. Because there is that tendency to want to protect your home team, right?
Yeah.
And so I do have concerns over that says we've contracted.
My final question, just to wrap up for today, what's the timeline, anticipated timeline at this point? Like, how can residents connect, learn where, if they want to say something, who should they be saying it to and when?
So we're in a race against time at this point. I believe most people understand the intent of House Bill, 101107. State Senator Janice Marchman is working on introducing and passing a bill that will, eliminate any loophole that the city might think is there and clarify that that's a grandfathering clause and, you got 125-year period and that's it. She's slowed down a little bit. I believe my understanding is that the city and the developer asked to meet with her so that they could present their side. And so I think that did happen this last week. And so that, kind of caused a delay. So we are under a tight time frame. The legislative session ends May 6th, and the city plans to vote on this on April 18th. I would question how ethical it is for a city to pursue this when they're questioning the intent of a bill and a state statute, and the prime sponsor is telling you one thing and you disagree. It seems like you'd put the brakes on, and if need be, you would let a court decide that rather than rush it through to try to beat the deadline. So I question what is our obsession with assisting this one particular developer over any and all else. It seems like in some ways I think people have lost their minds.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not rational or logical. I mean, just slow down. What's the hurry? That parcel has been within the Centerra URA, for a long time, since 2008. Why are we rushing this through now? Why not let a court, if you honestly believe that there's this big gap between understanding of the intent of that bill, let's let a court decide.
Right. Well, I think all of your why questions are the ones that a lot of us have too. And, hopefully we'll get some answers and
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah,
Thank you
so-
for all of your hard work. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, and
sharing this with us. This is
people keep
a lot.
sending emails to your city councilors, to
Yep.
your Lura board members, to your county commissioners, to Senator Janice Marchman. I would add probably the governor at this point,
Yeah.
because I believe the Chamber of Commerce has reached out to the governor.
Okay.
So I would include Governor Polis in your
Yeah.
emails and
Okay.
text and phone calls as well.
All right. Well,
And
that's
let them know this matters to the residents of Loveland.
yeah. It does.
And not just Loveland, I mean, you've got Larimer County.
Yeah.
That's gonna lose
yeah.
revenue. And even though you say you backfilled the lost revenue from the school district, that is backfilled. And that doesn't grow on trees. That's money that, is being collected by the state that should
Yeah.
go to education throughout the state, and the pool is lowered.
Yeah. For a developer.
My view is it's favoritism.
Yeah.
And that was my view before I was elected, and it hasn't changed. I mean, I don't understand it. I don't, in my little world, how I look at things, if we can afford to make this kind of incentive deal break for a large developer, why can't we offer that to the small and medium sized ones that probably really could be boosted?
Yeah.
Why is it one and not others? I don't understand.
I don't either. Thank you for trying to get there with us.
All
All right, that's it.
Thanks.
Yep.